Hey, it's Friday night. I decided to do a little bit of cooking. It is, I think we're on week 385 of the quarantine and pandemic. I'm trying my best to keep up with it so that when I look back on these videos, I can, kind of remember what was going on when I made a particular recipe. This week was interesting. I got to interview John Legend on Instagram Live. That was a first. Never done that with an artist before, so John Legend was in my living room, at least virtually. So in honor of that, I decided to make one of his wife's recipes, Chrissy Teigen. In case you didn't know, Chrissy Teigen and John Legend are married. Yes. So I am making her braised short ribs tonight. Jill Scott is accompanying me in the background here in the kitchen. So let's do it. So we start out with the spices. 2 teaspoons of paprika, 2 teaspoons of cayenne, a teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of black pepper. So the Chrissy Teigen recipe calls for you to basically brown the short ribs with canola oil and all the seasonings. And I didn't want to do that because A, it's time consuming. B, it's very messy. So what I'm doing is I'm putting olive oil on them, and then I'm going to rub the seasoning mix all over them and roast them in a 425 oven for about 20 minutes instead of trying to brown them in a pot. That's too much. It's too much work on a Friday night, Chrissy. I'm sorry. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little seasoning on each one, and then I'm gonna rub the seasoning in so it's all over each piece of short rib. Okay, so I've rubbed the spice seasoning all over the short ribs. At this point, Chrissy says you definitely need to wash your hands because you don't want to get cayenne in your eyes by accidentally rubbing your face. But at this point in the pandemic, I feel like we've all been trained not to touch our faces at all, ever, for any reason. 20 minutes. I've got 4 carrots that I scrubbed, 4 stalks of celery, a red onion, put it all in a pot with some canola oil. Chrissy said use pearl onions, but there's a pandemic and I wasn't going out looking for pearl onions, so I used what I had to make it work. It'll still be delicious. And while the vegetables are softening, I've taken the short ribs out of the oven, roasted them for about 20 minutes, and they're nice and brown. It was a lot easier than trying to brown them in a pan in batches. I didn't want to do all that. So yeah, perfect. So I cooked the vegetables until they started to brown a little bit, and I added a tablespoon and a half of all-purpose flour. Just stir it in and let it cook. You don't want to have the flour taste in there. That would be disgusting. After you cook the vegetables for a little while with the flour, add a tablespoon of tomato paste and stir it in and let it all cook for about a minute. Then Chrissy says you add 12 ounces of beer, any kind that you like. So we do that. Just in case you're wondering, I used Yingling. And we want to let everything boil until the liquid has reduced by about half. So about 5 minutes. So after it's thickened a little bit and reduced, I added in 2 tablespoons of brown sugar and now 2 cups of beef broth. I cut up 6 Roma tomatoes and added those to the pot along with 2 bay leaves and 2 teaspoons of salt. I'm going to stir it all in together. It smells amazing though. I think it's important to note here that upon review, I realized I could have just added 2 cans of diced tomatoes. I didn't actually have to cut up all of these Roma tomatoes, but I already did. Reading is fundamental, Karen. So, whatever. I brought everything to a boil and then turned it off. And I'm adding the ribs. Then I'm gonna put the whole pot, I'm gonna cover the pot, and I'm gonna put everything in the oven at 325 for about 2.5 to 3 hours. I want the bone side up. Up, I said. This is not a meal that you just make on the fly. You can't come home at 6 o'clock and be like, oh, I think I'm gonna make this, unless you and your family love to eat late, because it needs to cook for so long in the oven. Like I said, 2.5 to 3 hours. So you gotta plan this thing out. Tender side down, or the side that will be tender, and you cover it and put it in the oven. Okay, we take the lid off and everything smells amazing. So now I'm gonna take the ribs out and separate them from the bones, and separate the vegetables from the liquid. Now I'm gonna make broccoli one of my favorite ways. I put less than 1 inch of water actually into a pan and add the broccoli, and I let it hang out for like 3 minutes until it gets kind of tender. And when it's pretty and green like this, I take it out and add the really flavorful stuff. So I take the broccoli out of the pan and add a tin full of anchovies. Don't do it. I don't want to hear you saying anything. Don't turn your nose up. You like anchovies, you just don't realize it yet. They are nutty and delicious and add so much flavor, and you're gonna like it, I promise. Okay, so now that I've convinced you that you like anchovies, they melt into the olive oil as you cook them. They just kind of melt away and become flavor. I'm not even gonna add salt to this broccoli because you won't need it with the flavor of the anchovies. Then I add a teaspoon of minced garlic out of the jar, and then some crushed red pepper flakes, and cook it all together. This is gonna be so delicious. Then you add the broccoli back to the olive oil and the anchovies and the garlic and the red pepper flakes. Typically I use some capers in here too, but I was out of capers because, you know, there's a pandemic and I wasn't going to the store for that. So you mix it all together. It's gonna be so delicious. And I like to serve these short ribs on mashed potatoes with the sauce and the broccoli with the garlic and all the yumminess. Oh my goodness, I cannot wait to eat this. So let me end this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.